Hi there, my name's Paul Gretton-Watson. I'm a Masters of Applied Science student at La Trobe University, and in this brief video I want to give you an overview of what my research is going to focus on and the hypothesis or hypotheses I'm endeavouring to test within the research that is now well advanced in its at least planning phases and stage. So the way that I've structured this video is really in a series of component parts. One is the background and context to RACS and why they're undertaking the OWR, Operating with Respect, training in the first place. Then the link directly to the rationale and research question that I have elected to pursue. The hypotheses that then flow from that fundamental research question, then a brief overview of the methodology and the way I propose to test those hypotheses out, and finally a summation of why this research may prove to be important in the first place and what benefits may flow from it. I'm working with the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, who are obviously the peak body for surgeons across Australia and New Zealand. And as a result of fairly well-known and now broadly reported research that was undertaken and commissioned by RACS themselves on workplace behaviour and specifically workplace bullying, in 2015, that expert review and subsequent report that arose from that research indicate that there was significant systemic and very serious workplace bullying occurring across the profession, and that it was posing not just a risk to fellow surgeons and colleagues in surgical workplaces, but also to patients and patient safety. And that, understandably, was a great impetus for why RACS decided they needed to do something to significantly address this as a dynamic. What RACS chose to do was to develop over an 18-month period a training program called Operating with Respect. This program is a full-day program. It's very sophisticated, strongly evidence-based, was broadly consulted. Some of the best and smartest minds in workplace behavioural theory and surgeons in practice were consulted to build the program, and the intent was to have this program be rolled out across all surgeons over a 2-year time period. So the piloting for the Operating with Respect training program occurred in March-April last year, with the implementation of the full rollout commencing mid-2017, rolling all the way through till now. At this point, there are roughly another 9 training sessions that are slated for 2018, with a potential that there may be further training, in fact most likely, in early to mid-2019 as well, to do quite considerable mopping up of people who haven't yet had a chance to participate, and also from other surgeons and some other professional stakeholders who wish to actually undertake the training, given how well it's broadly been received. On a personal note, this is very good news for me, because this later phase of surgeons are the ones that will be invited to participate in the online survey and interview that I plan to undertake with those surgeons prepared to participate. I just want to come back to the fundamental rationale for why RACS are undertaking this whole of the profession training, as it gives an important context to my research question and effectively the part I may play in the evaluation of that effectiveness of the methodology that RACS is implementing, was chosen to run with. Clearly, RACS had many options. It could have invested in lots of coaching. It could have singled out senior surgeons and given them a far greater focus of attention around workplace bullying, with the view that their leadership would then influence surgical workplaces. They could have done any number of things to try and address what was now well known and in the media as being a significant professional cultural problem. What RACS decided to do was to undertake a whole of profession approach where they wanted all surgeons to participate in a full day training program with the fundamental hypothesis that that would create a significant change in being able to recognise poor workplace behaviour, B, identify it when it's occurring, and fundamentally know how to act if in fact they did experience negative workplace behaviour. Given that broad context and background and the aspirations of RACS, my research has developed quite a sharp focus on testing that, and my fundamental research question is industry-wide training for surgeons on respect for workplace behaviour effective at reducing the risk of bullying in surgical workplaces? So my hypothesis is that training without embedment will not produce the type of significant cultural and behavioural shift in surgical workplaces being sought. Notwithstanding the paucity of research looking at the evaluation of training as a methodology for creating cultural shift, particularly in relation to workplace behaviour and bullying, and even more specifically with surgery, there's virtually nothing that I've been able to find in the review of the literature I've done thus far. There does certainly appear to be far greater evidence that one requires an approach that is much more focused on training being a component part of multiple modalities of support, embedment and reinforcement across organisations to deliver and realise the full potential of whatever the organisational gain is that is trying to be achieved behaviourally. Now, I'm in no doubt that the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons are of the belief and view and hope that this whole of profession investment in training will produce a very significant behavioural shift and cultural shift right across the profession. And if I use the framework of Kirkpatrick and Kilpatrick, which really looks at criteria which tier the types of benefits that arise from training from level 1, which is really satisfaction that the training kind of occurred and people participated, through to levels 2, which is really much more about learning analysis and were learning objectives met, level 3 being about behavioural change, and level 4 being about whole of professional, whole of organisational result, fundamental cultural change. There's no doubt that RACS believe that this program, or hope that this program will deliver on that. My experience with training, and certainly the research I've looked at, and even some of Sandy's own research, has shown that it's most unlikely that training in and of itself will produce that level of shift, a level 3, level 4 shift. Okay, so given all of that, how am I going to test my hypothesis that more than training is going to be required in order to get a level 3, 4 shift in culture in surgical workplace settings? What I'm proposing to do is to do a pre-test, post-test survey and interview with surgeons prior to them participating in the operating with respect training that's being rolled out. What this will enable me to do is to have them focus on the preceding 6 months prior to the survey and interview, to make an assessment of what behaviour they're experiencing in the workplace and what their views are about what's contributing to that dynamic. I will then do a post-test, or 6 months after the Operating with Respect program, do the same interview and survey, in the reverse order, survey and interview, to again ask them about the preceding 6 months, so the 6 months following the Operating with Respect training that they've participated in, to see to what degree there has been any shift, if at all, to what degree they attribute that shift, if found, to the training or to some other variables or factors, and to really help to get a much more rich and rigorous understanding about what are the drivers for whatever change in workplace culture and behaviour may be occurring. To test this, I've built into the draft tool that I'm proposing to use for the survey and the draft interview protocol a series of questions which will help me identify to what extent there might be differences between the public teaching hospital type setting where many surgeons are employed versus private or their own private rooms or private practice and private hospital settings to see if there are any differences there. I'm very interested to see to what extent whether seniority of surgeon makes a significant difference, whether they're a trainee surgeon, a less than 10-year experienced surgeon, or a highly experienced 10-year plus experienced surgeon, and about whether some of those factors might influence the types of perceptions of the degree to which the training has or hasn't been effective, as well as asking them specifically about what supports or additional measures or endeavours they believe are required to affect the kind of change that RACS is seeking to achieve. So why does this research matter at all? I think there are a number of reasons why I think this is important. One, there certainly is a lack of current published or peer-reviewed research looking at surgical workplace behaviour, let alone the impact of training or other methodologies for shifting, positively influencing or shifting workplace behaviour or reducing workplace bullying in surgical or even medical contexts. So there's a gap, and this will help contribute to that gap. Two, I think the profession of surgery is still incredibly important in modern health settings, and if this training that RACS is undertaking does prove to be successful, and there are some indications that it's already deemed to be well worthwhile and positive already, but if it's deemed to be truly effective, then that will have significant implications for other professional groups who will be very intensely interested in looking at the outcomes of RACS's intervention. The two immediate benefits that come to mind with this particular research and the work that RACS is undertaking is that it could influence future funding of similar whole of profession training initiatives that might be undertaken where the stakes are very high and governments are prepared to fund that level of investment, potentially for other professional groups, allied health groups, nursing groups, or other medical groups where a similar behavioural shift is being sought. So moving from the macro and slightly lofty types of benefits that might arise from this research to the more specific surgical context, I think if my research is effective at demonstrating what the key drivers are for affecting change, it is likely to have a significant impact on how and in what ways further embedment, follow-up or reinforcement may occur to cement or even augment the kinds of outcomes that are affected through the Operating with Respect whole of profession rollout. Hopefully that's given you a reasonable overview of the research that I'm undertaking, the fundamental question I'm seeking to answer, some of the hypotheses that I'm aiming to test, and how I'm endeavouring to do so with the broad methodology that I have elected to undertake. The rest is yet to play out, and I certainly hope I have a further update for you at some point down the track. Thank you for listening.